Episode 6 ended with a rather steamy revelation in that Rhaenyra and Mysaria are more than just queen and subject. In her time of desperate need, Mysaria has been her only true friend. For that, the Black Queen has awarded her a kiss. It's probably for the best that things didn't go beyond that, considering the fact that Rhaenyra has more pressing matters to attend to, like a stolen dragon, for example. But this budding romance is a total reversal of Mysaria's role in all of this, because in Fire and Blood, these two don't exactly get together, and that ends up influencing the final stages of the war. So in this video, we'll talk about why Rhaenyra and Mysaria getting together is a total reversal of the books, and how it can end in disaster. So, spoiler alert before you go any further, because trust us, you'll need it. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, let's begin. A dancer from Lys, not a slave from Yi Ti, Mysaria's original character in Fire and Blood. There's a few fundamental differences between Mysaria from the show and the book, not the least of which is her ethnicity. In House of the Dragon, she was born in the fabled lands of Yi Ti, beyond the Jade Gates, near the end of the world. Her father abused her as a child. She was sold as a bed slave, and somehow she wound up as a working woman in King's Landing, where at least she was free of chains in practice, if not in essence. She worked her way up to becoming Daemon's favored paramour. And that much is true for Book Mysaria as well, except she comes from a land known for lies and deception. In Fire and Blood, Mysaria came to Westeros from Lys and had the milk-pale skin reminiscent of Dragon Lords. Lys was the favored pleasure retreat of the Dragon Lords of Valyria when the Freehold still existed. The blood of the dragon runs deeper there than even in Volantis, and many of Lys's people are born with the silver blonde hair and purple eyes of a Valyrian. However, wars in Lys weren't fought with armies and dragons. They were fought with plots and poisons. The Lyseni are infamous for being some of the most conniving people in the known world, and the fact that they specifically train bed slaves should tell you how they generally procure power. Mysaria comes from a city of lies and deception, and is quite adept at spreading them herself when needed. During her time with Daemon, she became his chief confidant and the mother of his unborn child. But unlike the show, it wasn't one of his games. Mysaria actually became pregnant with his kid, and ended up losing it when she was banished to Lys. That second half could have been a lie, because it said that she was on a ship when it happened, but she could have decided to go back to King's Landing after losing her child as well. Regardless, once she returned, Daemon became aware of her existence and kept her at arm's length away until the right opportunity presented itself. The years had turned Mysaria thicker than she used to be, but her charms now lay in her powers of persuasion. When Daemon contacted her for help with the Blood and Cheese situation, Mysaria was already well established in the city as an information broker. When the deed occurred, she and Cheese were not found. But knowing King's Landing and the loose Hightower grip over it, tricking the Greens wouldn't have been much of a problem. She only made her presence felt once Rhaenyra secured the throne, and after that, much was said about her time at court. It was said that Daemon immediately resumed his relationship with Mysaria. Some claimed Rhaenyra approved of it, others say she remained ignorant, and yet others think she joined in on the fun. Whatever the case, Mysaria's acts as Mistress of Whisperers were nowhere near as good as sending starving people food to buy PR points. After the fall of King's Landing, Mysaria is mentioned twice. The first time is after Daemon departs for his final encounter with Aemond, and the second when Helaena commits suicide. Once the Blacks suffer the first of their major betrayals, Rhaenyra starts seeing traitors in every shadow, and Mysaria feeds into this paranoia. She tells the Queen that Daemon and Nettles had struck up a relationship, which infuriates Rhaenyra and compels her to command her own bannermen to commit taboo treason. Basically, she asks Lord Mootton to violate guest rights and kill a person underneath his own roof, and she doesn't even know the details of Daemon and Nettles' relationship. According to records found at Maidenpool, it was said that Daemon treated Nettles more like a daughter than a lover, teaching her how to curtsy, dress, and behave properly with highborn lords. They shared a bathtub, but it said that was more because the girl likely didn't know how to wash herself, considering her common birth. There are suspect elements to their dynamic, but they're murky at best, and Mysaria is the one who blows things out of proportion in the first place. When Alicent Hightower protests Rhaenyra's plans for her sons, Mysaria suggests throwing her and Helaena into a pleasure house so they can know the pain of mothering a bastard. And when Helena's found impaled on the spikes within the moat surrounding Maegor's Holdfast, it's whispered that the White Worm, in her misery, revealed to her the grisly fate of her son Maelor. In the end, she was forced to perform a more extreme version of Cersei's Walk of Shame, and she didn't really make it all the way. Mysaria was the second known Mistress of Whisperers, a spy master so good at her job that she was compared to a man who spied using magic. Decades after the dance, Brynden Rivers becomes Master of Whisperers to two kings, and he uses both fire magic and green magic to keep himself updated on the realm's talk and treacheries. He controlled direwolves and ravens like Bran, but used a glamour like Melisandre, and he could probably also tell things by gazing into the flames. Considering King's Landing Godswood doesn't have a weirwood tree, canonically speaking, to compare a man with that many advantages to a mere dancing girl from Lys, well, that's a rise to power that should be documented. But the point here is, Book Mysaria was as scheming and insidious as the people of her homeland. When Daemon heard Rhaenyra had put a hit out on Nettles, he said, "A queen's words, a whore's work." And in the books, that might just be true. But in the show, Mysaria and Rhaenyra have more personal stakes involved going into this thing. The reason she says all those things might not be Daemon after all.
माफ कीजिएगा।
The Queen's secret affair and leverage. Say what you will about Alicent. At least she was careful to not let anyone that wasn't blood witness her in violation of her oath. And Helaena did her duty as a daughter and kept quiet about the whole thing. Rhaenyra got caught kissing Mysaria by her Queensguard member Laurent Marbrand. But since her White Swords know the meaning of loyalty better than the Kingmaker, we can expect him to keep quiet about it. What we can't expect is to see Rhaenyra handle this development rationally, because we know she isn't exactly amazing at sneaking around. She practically kept Harwin Strong as her concubine during their time together, with Viserys choosing to turn a blind eye to his grandson's bastardy. She isn't exactly subtle when she gets into political matters, and though she can keep things to herself when she's upset, she's as impulsive as Alicent, Aemond and Daemon combined. When she returned from mourning Luke, she simply told her council that she wanted Aemond. And those were a queen's words, but a mother's work. Rhaenyra's gone through a lot recently, what with her husband refusing to acknowledge her status and fleeing from their marriage instead of choosing to fix it. Her counselors don't agree with her. Her children don't agree with her. Every move she makes seems to backfire, and she's also lost her staunchest supporter. And amongst all this turmoil, the only person who's been by her side and reaffirmed her belief in her goodness is Mysaria. The white worm of the show left King's Landing as soon as she learnt of the blockade, because she needed to get away from the High Towers. Mysaria's character has been fleshed out a lot more in the show, considering she's the spy master to rival all spy masters. She started off as Daemon's woman, got tricked into a standoff between him and the king when he declared she was pregnant when she couldn't get pregnant, and then went right back to King's Landing to keep spinning her web of lies. Over time, she became a brothel proprietor and information broker, which worked out exceptionally well for her, considering the Green Heir had a taste for whores. Prince Aegon had always spent more time at the Street of Silk than any other place in King's Landing combined, and so Mysaria was well placed to deliver him to Otto Hightower when he and Alicent got in a standoff to see who could control the king. She kept Daemon safe when he got drunk and passed out in Flea Bottom. Mysaria did what she had to do to survive in a climate so foreign to her. Lys would probably feel like home. Yi Ti is barely discussed in the overarching lore of Ice and Fire. It's Martin's equivalent of ancient China, and is only relevant to the narrative because it's tied into the origin of the first civilization of the world and quite possibly dragons. If Mysaria was from Lys, at least she'd have some idea about the people she was getting involved with, especially considering Lys is one of the 3 daughters of the Triarchy. But the fact is, she isn't, and that makes her sympathetic backstory feel a lot more genuine than the evil seductress trope she personifies in the books. Mysaria has truly felt the desperation of the life of a slave. When she rose in power, she continued to employ whores and trade in secrets with the Gold Cloaks, but her ways never brought harm. Mysaria has never tortured someone for information, for instance, unlike Lord Larys, who moves around with his torture device travel pack wherever he goes. And she has real motivation to hate the Greens after her manse was burnt to the ground thanks to them. When Daemon used her to get his revenge, she felt like she'd been treated like dirt once again, but then Rhaenyra set her free. Emma Darcy's character is very different from the books, who, when she learnt of Daemon and Mysaria continuing their relationship, said, "Let Daemon slake his hungers where he will, and so shall we." She's actually trying to be competent and making cautious moves that might look cowardly at first, but will end up paying off in the grand scheme of things. Mysaria is the first person she showed her queen's mercy to, and in return she gained a powerful ally and constant companion. Mysaria brings her right back on track. She gives her plans that'll destabilize King's Landing from within, and while at first it seemed like trust, now it looks like love. Rhaenyra is probably the only person that's ever kept her word to Mysaria and never played games with her after. That kind of a gesture tends to leave a strong impression. We're not saying it's all-consuming, but it is something. When you factor this into whatever's said of Mysaria in the books, they start to make a little more sense. Maybe Daemon doesn't resume his relationship with Mysaria after his vision quest at Harrenhal. Maybe he does it with Rhaenyra, and that's what ignites the White Worm's jealousy. Once the city's secure, she helps send Daemon away and makes Rhaenyra see daggers in the dark because she wants the queen all to herself. Their dynamic at the end of episode 6 makes things complicated for them, but it also simplifies other things in a way. Mysaria and Rhaenyra being the ones that get together is totally opposite of what we're told in Fire and Blood, and it's just as well. How can we trust sources that once sported the color green? Hey. Marvelous verdict. But speaking of things going in the wrong direction, we're afraid we've got some bad news for you. That's all we've got for our critical analysis of what makes Rhaenyra and Myssaria's relationship so unique, as well as a ticking time bomb. Secrets have a way of getting exposed in the world of ice and fire, and King's Landing has as many rats as it has watchful eyes and ears. These two lovebirds better be careful, because the Red Keeper's had enough of forbidden love for a generation. But that's what we think. What do you think about their relationship, huh? Let us know in the comments below. We'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, don't forget, history is written in fire and blood. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.